Hello, found footage fans, and welcome to We Found a Tape.
Tape Talks.
Welcome to Tape Talks, a special new series from We Found a Tape. Here we sit down with directors, filmmakers, and cinematographers to deep dive into the creative process behind found footage filmmaking, from writing and shooting to the journey of bringing these unique stories to life.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Tape Talks. We're joined today by a very special guest, Chris Vander Kaay, the creator, writer, director, actor, author, man of many hats. Created a great found footage movie called Ask, and has an upcoming show on Found TV, which is an exclusive, called Found Footage Finds. Welcome to Tape Talks.
Thank you guys for so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. I like the show, so I'm excited to be on it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you, Chris. But yeah, kind of starting off, we have Found Footage Finds coming out on June 4th on Found TV. Can you explain a bit what the show's about, and maybe even some of the influences for making this show?
Sure. Yeah. I am notorious for not being great at describing my stuff, so I'll do my best. I'll circle it, and you can just chop out boring stuff as I get around to it. Found Footage Finds is a 5-episode docu-series, but it's shot in found footage style, and each one of the episodes focuses on a single, I guess you call it, subgenre or category of found footage. And in each episode, the point is to sort of dig into that subgenre. We talk to a few filmmakers. We do some behind the scenes and historical and sort of psychological observations. And then, of course, we just recommend a ton of movies in that subgenre. The premise basically being every single episode is kind of like a primer and a deep dive at the same time. Gets you some context about where it came from, but then also gives you a bunch of recommendations for, if you like the genre, you should definitely check these titles out.
Awesome.
Very cool.
And what was sort of the main influence for making that? Is it mainly due to a lack of content for that specific thing?
Yeah, in this medium, I feel like there's a lack. There's no lack of conversation between fans about found footage movies. Like, that's, I would argue, primarily that is how found footage films get any kind of reputation. They don't really have a big budget for marketing. They don't really have any kind of a push from studios or distributors for the most part. So the way that movies become popular is one found footage film fan saw it, told somebody about it on Reddit, or mentioned it in a Facebook group or wherever, and it just starts to sort of expand from there. And it's this organic growth. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why some of the most popular titles are ones that did not have big distributors, because it came out, people found it, they liked it. And found footage fans, by and large, tend to be pretty smart in not falling for, a great marketing campaign for a found footage film is not going to convince a found footage filmmaker, a fan, as much as just another found footage fan saying, hey, you should check this out. And what I realized was, I thought that was awesome in the sort of like print capacity. We have that a lot in chat rooms and stuff like that. But what we don't have is, aside from on YouTube, where there's a lot of individual people talking individually about films, I thought, well, what if there was a place where I could collect many people, aside from the observations I'm making? What if we got a bunch of filmmakers to talk about their films a little bit on the show? What if we got some experts and super fans to also weigh in on what they think of the subgenre? And then, so I thought, I was like, well, the best way that this makes sense is all of those people can come on if we split it all up, one episode per subgenre, and then just dig into what we love about that one in that one episode. And so I, made some calls, and I got really lucky with a lot of the filmmakers that were willing to talk to me, because it was easy, because it was found footage style. They could literally take their phone out of their pocket, shoot themselves answering the questions, send it to me via Google Drive, and I could add it to the show. So, I got insanely lucky with, I don't know if I told you guys, but Leslie Manning, the director of Ghostwatch,
Yes.
She was kind enough to just say, yeah, absolutely, I'll answer those questions. So, like, we got some really cool names there. You obviously saw the ones that were in the episode you guys looked at, the Screen Life episode. Michelle Iantuano was on there talking about live stream. And so, yeah, for me, the thinking was, like, I've seen all of these individual pieces in different places online or on YouTube. I've never seen all of it gathered together and then given sort of like an episodic shape. So that was, I guess you could say, the motivation was the community itself. I just wanted to give it some sort of like a shape to it.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. I think that was described perfectly.
And I really enjoyed the episode. It's very informative, not only just for the subgenre that you're describing, but also in the movie recommendations. I can count at least 5 in there that I had not seen before. So I mean, those are some that I've jotted down because they look so interesting just from the small little bits and pieces that were in there. So I mean, it's a super great episode, and I can't wait to see the rest of them.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because one of the primary goals with it was I knew I wasn't going to be able to talk about every film in the subgenre, but what I could do is I focus on, I think it's like 3 more well-known ones and then 5 obscure ones, and then the section where we just talk about the genre in general. But during that section where I'm just talking generally, it's just clip after clip from trailer, and like on purpose was like I think probably 10 or 15 movie trailers where we're just showing clips of those movies, because I thought the way that I often find found footage films is I'll just scroll through Tubi and watch 20 trailers, and then something will jump out at me. Well, I thought, well, why not do double duty in this scene? I'll provide you a bunch of really great information, but also look at the right-hand side of the frame, and you're going to see at least 15 movies. Hopefully, like you said, 5 of those titles across the whole episode you haven't seen. And that's really the goal, is like in a half an hour, can I mention enough movies so that you'll walk away with 5 or 6 titles you haven't seen that you can seek out now,
Right. Yeah, it was super informative. I like the method that you chose. It was really good to have the trailers playing in the background while you're explaining the subgenre. Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, I mean, you guys are literally my target audience. So if you like it, I'm going to say that I'm going to consider it a success already, even before it's coming out.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great to see some of the, especially for the Screen Life one. There was a lot of movies on there that I have recommended to people numerous times. One of which is Collingswood Story, and the other is Open Windows. 2 of which I just saw completely randomly before we ever thought about making a found footage based podcast. I just saw them. I was like, wow, this is like kind of revolutionary for me at the time, and I love Elijah Wood, and thought that's an awesome one. I always recommend it to people. So
yeah,
that was good to see.
Yeah, I love Elijah Wood. Was one of the few people that, because he came off of Lord of the Rings movies, he was like a bankable global star. And he's one of the few people I can think of that really parlayed that success into doing a bunch of really interesting, small, quirky stuff, using his cachet to be able to get them made. Like, I don't know who would have made that, or like he did a great thriller called Grand Piano. That's like a real-time movie where he's a concert pianist and he's got an earpiece in, and this guy's basically telling him he has to play this piece perfectly, or this guy's going to shoot somebody in the audience while he's playing. And it's like a lot of really interesting high concept movies that absolutely would never have been made had, Frodo Baggins not signed on to be in it,
And it's funny, as you mentioned that, I literally was having a conversation today. Another person that comes to mind for that is Daniel Radcliffe, who played Harry Potter. He's another
actually,
that went on to.
I say one of the only ones, but honestly, there's kind of a trifecta. Robert Pattinson did that quite a bit.
Yes.
So did Daniel Radcliffe, and then Elijah Wood. Like, I love that there's sort of like these teen dudes that inexplicably became hugely popular with a global audience, and then they're like, all right, well, let's see if we can take this out for a ride. Like, how long can I run off of this fame to do cool, weird stuff?
And they're still doing it.
Yeah,
today.
Yeah, I just saw Mickey 17 a few weeks ago. They're definitely still making the weird.
Yeah. I found a copy of Good Time on Blu-ray the other day with Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
Which
what
is
a cruelly ironic title that movie is.
Oh yeah.
That one is I love that movie, but man,
so good.
It puts you through the ringer.
Oh yeah, and Cosmopolis. I don't know if you've seen Cosmopolis.
Yeah,
but that's a strange David Cronenberg one.
Yeah, no, he's one of those ones. Well, and he's also smart too. Like, every once in a while, he'll dip back in. He made Batman because he's like, this will get me another 7 weird movies before I got to make another, tent pole or whatever.
Absolutely.
Not sure how we got here from found footage, but it was a fun diversion.
It was 6 degrees of Elijah Wood.
Yeah, exactly. But you also brought up Collingswood Story, which is that kind of is the flashpoint for where I began the conversation about Screen Life. And that was kind of one of the things I wanted to do with these episodes, was so much conversation in the found footage community. I think we accidentally do it to ourselves because the rest of the world does it, which is we don't take the genre that we love as seriously as we should. And I think it deserves it. I think it's really groundbreaking. I would argue that of all the genres, it's the most groundbreaking in the sense that the second that there is a new kind of recording technology, found footage is trying to figure out a way to utilize it for something. So it's literally on the cutting edge of visual storytelling. Like Collingswood's story was the early 2000s. That was before people really were even communicating much on computers, and we were already making movies with the computer as the new place where we were telling stories. And it was only maybe 2014 before there was even a major release where a studio was doing something like that with like Unfriended and stuff. So I really think, I wish more people, they don't need to be scholarly, but I wish they treated the genre with more sort of respect and reverence for the fact that it's really one of the more daring and groundbreaking and certainly innovative technologically of any of the genres that make movies, period, I think.
For sure. Yeah. And I think mainly a lot of that stigma comes from the fact that there is some form of formula that you can apply to it and pump out a lot of Blair Witch knockoffs. Really is really where it came from in terms of the parody of itself, is that everything really was trying to be like the Blair Witch because of how successful it was. And
yep. Yeah, and then again with Paranormal Activity was another one. You get your boom, yeah. Yeah, and truth be told, the one thing that found footage both has going for it and you can hold against it is the threshold for what it costs to make a found footage movie is so much lower than any other genre that it means anybody can do it, which is a double-edged sword. It's great because it means there's nothing stopping you, but it also means it's not great because sometimes there's nothing stopping you. Right. So you can find a lot of garbage, but also you can find movies from people like if I had to try and make Ask as a traditional film and gone through the system, it would never have happened. My first film. It was only because I made it as a found footage movie that cost less than $250 that I could essentially just do whatever the hell I wanted and no one could tell me no. And there's a freedom to that in found footage that there really isn't anywhere else. It's, sort of, I forget who I was talking to about it, but I was like, this is the punk rock or the community theater of movies, because literally you've got a camera in your pocket. You could just do this right now. Just go do it, And I love that. I love that ethos because it means you can always be surprised by something interesting from a person you've never heard from before.
Yeah, that's great. We had a similar conversation with James Ersted, who made What Happened to Susie. He was very much in that realm of idea as well. He's from like LA and grew up on LA punk, so like I think it was a good metaphor. I think I brought it up and I was like, it fits perfectly. It's like these types of movies shouldn't work. They shouldn't, like the Blair Witch shouldn't have made all this money, but it did because of that sort of low budget punk rock attitude, and then after the fact, and there's a lot of great stuff that comes out of that. Really, the lack of resources is where the creativity spurs on, and is where you get a lot of that creativity coming from. I think that's also a huge factor.
Well, and it also tells me that what audiences are really most interested in is the passion of the people making the project and the interesting idea, because oftentimes found footage movies have literally nothing else. Like I made a movie where 90% of the movie was my face on screen. Like that threatens to be boring at every second. As someone who spent my entire life with me, I know how boring that can be. But if you execute a story in an interesting way, you have some characters who are compelling, and you have a story that's just slightly off the beaten path or really effectively captures whatever it is you're trying to capture, the fear or isolation or whatever. The audiences frequently, I find with found footage, are willing to forgive you a lot of the technical issues that you can't overcome because you don't have a ton of money. In the same way that, nobody goes to a punk concert and goes, boy, I think they only used 4 chords the whole show. I don't really like them. You know what I mean? Nobody does that.
Right.
A punk show, they're like, those songs were badass. Those guys were really passionate. Great lyrics, and that's where it ends. Nobody critiques them for their skill set as musicians for the most part,
Very true. Very true. Yeah, it's definitely the passion is, and I think it's mainly because of the found footage fan base really has such a passion for the genre. I know that we definitely have. And when you see like a really off the beaten path found footage movie that hits all those points and like is compelling and interesting, like the first thing you want to do is scream and shout and tell everyone. So yeah, it works. It works perfectly.
I mean, that energy is literally kind of what I was trying to capture with the show. It's like there's basically no feeling better than to be like, hey, have you guys seen whatever the name of the movie is, and no one in the room has seen it? Because then you get to be the person that just introduced 8 people to an awesome movie, So like the inner curator in me is always very excited about being able to say, yeah, but did you know about this one? And never with like a gatekeeping thing. It's always more like a, did you know? If not, prepare for something awesome. You know, I love that part of the fandom. And found footage films, I think horror probably more than most other regular genres, people are like that, but found footage are even like exponentially more even than regular horror filmmakers. Like they're willing to do the hunt. You know, and more than once I've been in a group where I hear somebody saying, you know, does anybody I can find this movie that it hasn't been available for 7 years and they were looking for like a bootleg with German subtitles on eBay that they were bidding on. It's like that level of dedication to find that one title they've been searching for. It's really impressive.
As physical media owners in this establishment here, yeah, I can attest to that. there's some, and recently I've been going on this great like found footage physical media kick as well, where I'm pulling on like a lot of DVDs and like special edition and some on VHS. Like I think is such a great thing to come across. It's such a welcome surprise because again, along with that, you know, punk rock and, you know, low budget, with that also comes like hard to find unreleased sort of things that you're really trying to find. And one of the main ones that comes to mind is sort of August Underground, like that, the more extreme style where they were printing DVDs like out of Philadelphia or whatever it is that Fred Vogel's from, but printing their own DVDs. They only just recently stopped doing that and sort of gave it to Unearthed to bring out these like beautiful special editions. And I think we're moving into that sort of time frame now where we're now seeing a lot more coming out in terms of physical media, and found TV in particular are definitely huge contributors to that. They're very much trying to keep this genre on the up, and they've done some fantastic work. So what was the process like of working with found in order to get found footage finds on there?
Well, that one, so you know, even though they haven't been around forever, the second that they started existing, getting something on that network was like a bucket list thing for me because I'm such a huge found footage fan. And I literally adopted the week that they came out. In October, I had the app the week that it came out. I've been a huge fan of theirs. And I'm trying to remember how the conversation even started. I think it probably would have been from, I connected with Louis and Monica are members in different groups, you know, Facebook and Reddit and stuff like that. And so I think maybe one of them had reached out to congratulate me about Ask coming out. And then we just started a conversation. And then when I told them about the idea, this was before anything had been made. It was just an idea still. I had started contacting filmmakers, but I hadn't made anything yet. Told them about the idea and they were like, oh, that absolutely sounds like a thing that we would put on Found TV if you were interested. And I was like, well, obviously, of course I'm interested. And so basically what we decided on is eventually this will get everywhere. But what I was interested in doing was teaming up with them to make it an exclusive at Found, because it seemed like the kind of thing that makes total sense for that work. Because that network feels like the place where all the stuff that you've been trying to find everywhere is finally, you know, like, I don't know if you guys use Just Watch, but I'm constantly putting stuff in my in the Just Watch app so that I can be alerted if it ever appears anywhere, you know. And so Found feels like the Just Watch app is just notifying me now. Like that's all it is. I go in there and I go, oh, I've been looking for that since 2007, you know. So I knew I wanted to work with them, and inadvertently, I didn't realize this when we were first talking, but I have the honor of being the very first nonfiction content to appear on Found TV. All of their movies and all their TV shows are fictional. So this docuseries is actually the very first nonfiction thing appearing on Found TV. So that was a fun sort of surprise, you know, notoriety. But Louis and Monica are fantastic. They made an awesome movie. So they're also, like me, they are creators that are also curators trying to, you know, spread the good word about stuff. So it was just a perfect fit. It literally wasn't even like a submission process in the traditional sense. Like they were basically like, go make it and let us know when you're done. And you know, because I think they knew from having seen the first film, and I think maybe I sent them a promo trailer when I put it together, they were just on board. So it was, you know, they're very cool about that. Like if I would say that the reason Found TV is awesome is because there's stuff on Found TV that you can't find anywhere else, not just because they got a contract there, but because a lot of times other places won't take it. They just don't have the reverence for the genre. that Found TV does. So you'll find titles there that you won't find streaming anywhere else, not because they chose to only put it there, but because no place else will put it out because they don't have the respect for it that that the Lovellas do. So it's I think it's just a fantastic platform. So I was willing to like beg, but I didn't have to, as it turns out. So that was nice.
Brilliant. And another place that typically you would see found footage horror is POV, which I believe was there to put out Ask.
Yes.
What was the process like for working with POV?
Yeah, so POV, it was interesting because, well, first of all, they were awesome in helping me with getting Ask out into the world, and then doing all the stuff that I very early on was terrified about, which is like basically all of the self-distribution stuff. Like when I was making the movie, my biggest fear was that it was going to be done, and then I wouldn't know what to do except to like basically put it out on YouTube. That was like my entire plan. Was like, I don't know what to do with this. Luckily, a friend of mine, Mary Beth McAndrews, who runs, she's the editor-in-chief at Dread Central. She's a friend of mine for a few years, and so she recommended a couple of film festivals to enter it in, Unnamed Footage Festival and a couple of other places. While she was at the Unnamed Festival for something else, my film did not get in the festival, but it was seen by some people at the festival, and I guess one of the people on the panel was one of the guys that runs POV Horror. And so they started up a conversation. She said, you know, would you be interested in submitting it there? I said, of course I would. I know their stuff very well. I've had their app on my, on my phone for years. So I just submitted it there through the standard channels, but I think I obviously had a better chance because I had the in that Mary already talked to them. So I've honestly, the full disclosure of everything in this journey so far is that I've been really lucky to know a lot of smart people who are way better at this shit than I am, so that's my advice to all of you. Be polite, be kind, and help out people because, not cynically, you should do it to get something from it. But if you just do that, not expecting stuff back, then oftentimes you do get it back. And I've just been lucky, two of the producers on the film, Mary Beth, and then a friend of mine, Preston Fossil, are both people who have deep connections into the horror community through Dread Central and other platforms. And it's the only reason that anybody knows anything about Ask. This would have been something that sort of vanished in the ether on my YouTube channel, if not for them. But now, it's not Paranormal Activity popular, but it's so much more well received, and the community is far more aware of it than I could possibly have imagined for a movie of its size. And that's largely owed to the early support that I had from people, who had nothing to gain from it except for to help someone out because they liked the movie and the person. So,
wow, I love that. I love that story.
Yeah, I genuinely, I say all the time, I'm like, I made this movie, quote unquote, by myself, meaning I shot the whole thing by myself. But it would be a movie that just I had seen if it hadn't been for the fact that all of these relationships, coalesced when they did. So you never know. Don't make enemies in a community if you don't have to, is the best advice I can give you. Is why I don't talk shit about other people's films too.
Here you go.
Aside from the fact that I know how hard they are to make. And so therefore I try not to, I made a rule. I think I said, I used to say 100,000. I used to say 50,000. I say 100,000 now. If your movie costs less than $100,000, I will never trash talk it, because whatever you did mostly for passion, because you certainly weren't doing it to make a bunch of money. If it's above that, then feel free to criticize. But for my thing is like, I will give you positive notes on everything that you did right, and I will keep my mouth shut on the stuff that didn't work because you didn't have enough money for me to be kicking you. Like I only punch up, and that's technically punching sideways as far as I'm concerned.
Or down.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's a good way of thinking of it. David, I feel like I've been speaking for a while, so you can ask some questions if you like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, aside, you've mentioned this journey that you've been on here, through Ask, all the people that you met along the way, now doing found footage finds. Now, how long would you say that this has been in the works for, as far as making found footage finds?
So this is the fastest turnaround that I've ever had on a project in terms of actual production. So it premieres on June 4th, Wednesday, June 4th is when it premieres. I officially decided that I was going to make it in mid-February. So what is that? February to March, March to April, April to May, 3.5 months from the time that I decided to start putting it together to the time that it premieres on Found TV, which is absurd. It's frankly stupid that someone would try to make episodes of a television series in that amount of time. But when I say that, the reason I was able to prepare it and put it together so quickly is I spent years cultivating a list of 1,800 titles, found footage titles over, probably the past decade, and splitting them into smaller lists that I have on Letterboxd by subgenre, and making lists of contact info for filmmakers in the event that I was going to work on some project that I could talk to them. So what would normally have taken somebody probably 3.5, 4 months to compile all that kind of stuff if they decided to do this project is stuff that I had just been doing casually over the last, like I said, last decade of fandom. Because I had at one point in time thought, I'm going to write a book, comprehensive book about found footage filmmaking. Quickly learned that was the stupidest thing in the world, because by the time it even got to be published, there would be another 140 found footage films that had been made since the time I stopped writing. So I knew it had to take some other shape. And so when I realized that it should be this show, I was like, well, I accidentally have done all the research necessary to turn this into a show. So that's why the production time was so short.
Right. Awesome. Now, being that I know this hasn't officially started airing till June 4th, and we're in the episodes touching on the different subgenres. Would you be looking at possibly like a season 2 or a continuation of the show, maybe diving further into the genres, or even maybe not? I guess reviewing certain movies for different genres, but diving into them more and kind of picking them apart a bit.
The short answer is yes. I absolutely. So there are absolutely plans for a potential second season. I have gone so far as to talk to some people about doing interviews for a second season. I know what subgenres I'm going to tackle, because I only did 5 episodes in the first season. There are far more than subgenres potentially to talk about for found footage. So I chose the 5 that made the most sense for me to start with, because I wanted to do, like, I forget who I was talking to. I was jokingly, I said, I might get kicked out of the found footage community when people see all 5 episodes and realize I didn't do an episode about paranormal investigations, because that's literally the one with the most entries. But I was holding for that exact reason. There are more paranormal investigation movies than anything. So I needed some more time to do my research and really get an episode I was proud of. But I have a plan for an entire second season, and potentially, I'm trying not to think too far ahead, but I definitely have ideas for what I would love to do for a third season, which would be sort of more the interesting outlier stuff that's not really a subgenre, but I would love to do one that's just on franchises, maybe an episode just on TV shows that use found footage and fake documentary style, doing an episode on I call them mock rock docs, but basically any music related fake documentary, everything from This Is Spinal Tap to, CB4. Right. And so I have a lot of ideas, and none of the ones I just mentioned are in season 2. But basically, the only thing preventing me from doing that is seeing how the reception of the first season is. As is always the plan. You could have there's how many times have we seen a movie that's going to begin a trilogy and then we never see any of the rest of the titles because it just doesn't catch on. So I just don't want to plan too far ahead. Not that they're insanely expensive to make, but it's a big chunk of time out of not being able to make another project to do 5 episodes of TV. So I just want to know that it catches on with the audience and that they actually like it. If so, I will run this thing into the ground. You know what I mean? I will make 4 or 5 seasons of this, and who knows what it expands into from there, if it changes shape. But I would love for this to become a semi-regular thing, once a year or twice a year. God, depends. If I can shoot a season in 3.5 months, I could squeeze 2 of these in a year. But it really just matters as to the audience finds it and watches it on streaming. That's going to make the biggest impact, because the model is different for found footage stuff. Other filmmakers, they get paid up front. Oftentimes, maybe they get a little bit of the profit, but mostly they get paid up front to make the movie, and then it belongs to somebody else. With the stuff on the level that we're working on, I make all the money when people continue to watch something, So I start getting paid from the beginning, which is great, but you don't get paid a ton for streaming. So you just got to have audiences that want to continue watching your stuff, or large audiences that only watch it once. And so my hope is that the audience finds it. I would love to keep telling these stories. So fingers crossed I think they will. I think people love found footage movies. So if you keep recommending them to them, I'm hoping it'll catch on. You know.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely. I see this genre of horror expanding every day, and we see it on Instagram because that's where we do most of our communication with people in this community, and it just grows and grows more and more every day. And the more that you meet people and recommend this and recommend that, it's just getting so big. So I mean, as seeing this first episode that you shared with us, as a fan, I would expect to see this go to like season 5 if you could do season 5, because it was so great and I enjoyed it so much. So I wish you the best of luck and hope to see it grow to that and more.
From your lips to the algorithm's ears, you know what I mean? I hope it happens. Yeah, as long as the people are looking for it, like I said, it doesn't even have to be huge audiences. You know what I mean? I don't need Twilight audience size audiences. You know what I mean? I just need if 30% of the found footage audience shows up for this thing, this is a home run for me, So I will make this until the day that I die. I will be doing this in front of a green screen in a wheelchair. You know what I mean? That's the other great thing about this genre is because we talked earlier about the financial threshold, tons of movies come out every single year, new found footage films. And that's sometimes daunting because as a found footage fan, you want to keep up with it and it's impossible. But for someone like me, who's a curator, it's also fantastic because it means I'm never going to run out of movies to talk about. I knew a guy who did a podcast about every Laura Dern movie that ever came out. And I was like, she can only make movies so fast and she's also eventually going to pass away. So you're limited there. If you do one a week, you're done in, 4 years or whatever. But that will never. If I made a movie if I made an episode every single day about found footage films, I probably wouldn't be done for several years. There's just so much stuff out there, and it's coming out every day new.
Yeah, and there's so many large international markets. I've found so many great found footage movies from places like Ireland and places in Europe. Be My Cat was one that I was really excited about to see. So it is, and it's worldwide. It's such a foothold into the film industry in a way for a lot of people to prove that they can make a movie. I've heard that comment a few times as well. I made a found footage so that I could test myself to see if I could actually make a film, and it's crazy. And we found this out not necessarily the hard way, but we were at a sort of crossroads of what to do. We decided to lean more into found footage. Maybe not naive isn't the word, but I thought rather than sort of having a general horror-based podcast, which we've done in the past, we'll pick a subgenre, a niche, and we'll look at that. And this one is probably one of those ones that I don't know, maybe shouldn't have done because it's just so vast. It's like a wilderness of just all these movies, and I know that we're not going to be able to see every single one of them, but going on this journey to find sort of those obscure found footage movies from other countries, other religions and things like that, it's just it's such a thrill as a found footage fan. So.
Yeah. Well, and also the genre does something, I think, sort of accidentally, but one of the things I love, which is that my movie that was made for $250 can be on the same platform as someone who made a $250,000 found footage film, and they stand side by side, and people, they don't necessarily measure them the same, but what I mean is they're given equal opportunity for presentation and representation. And right. While I don't necessarily need that, I'm a straight white man, the world is my oyster. There are a lot of people in the world that do struggle to be able to get the opportunity to be able to, I can't go out and get a $3 million budget, but it would be easier for me probably to be able to get work in the industry, telling stories about myself looking the way that I look. There are people that don't always have that opportunity, depending on what country they live in, what their backgrounds are. This is sort of the great evener of odds in the sense that almost anyone can go make a thing right now. And it means that their unique perspective on the world will be represented by that thing. And there's largely not any gatekeepers that are telling them what thing is appropriate or inappropriate to put in there. So it means their unfiltered worldview can be there, fully representative of how I feel. Here it is. And it's rare that anybody gets that in film anymore. It's such an expensive medium when you're working on regular film that everybody's like, you know, all the bean counters want you to be as uncontroversial or as universal as possible, you know, like
Right.
make it for everybody. Don't make anybody mad. You know, I think, what did they say about Marvel movies? Everybody's hot and no one's having sex, right? Like that was the joke of movies nowadays, is that we can't possibly offend anyone. So everything has to be pretty and surface and don't disrupt anything. Horror is great at disrupting that, but even like regular narrative horror is a little more expensive. But found footage, man, there's just an open field for anybody to be able to do it. And so, you know, while I will say still that there is a large percentage of white dudes on the show in representing their films, the filmmakers, I was able to have a lot of the more diverse filmmakers come on and talk about. Corey Grant comes on and talks about Bigfoot, the Lost Coast tapes. Obviously, we talked about Michelle Iantuono. And it's a place where you have just as much opportunity to make a film, no matter your background, as anybody else does. So, like, it's the most democratic form of filmmaking, I feel like.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah, love that. And I love West Coast tapes. I love Lost Coast tapes, not West Coast tapes. Lost Coast tapes.
Yeah,
that one. Another surprising one that I found on Tubi randomly. I was like, I want to watch a found footage movie. I want to watch a Bigfoot one, and yeah, that came up and thoroughly enjoyed it. Told David about it, and he watched it like 2 nights ago. So
yeah, I watched it 2 nights ago. I got a kick out of it. It was good.
Yeah. Well, and I guess we already talked about, because you guys saw the Screen Life episode, which is episode 2 of the series. Episode 1 is a Bigfoot episode. So that first night on June 4th, those are the 2 episodes that'll premiere, Bigfoot and Screen Life. And so Corey Grant's on that one talking about it. And we also got Dylan Brown to talk about Tahoe Joe, the first Tahoe Joe. So yeah, so I was really lucky to find, I mean, I guess I won't say lucky. These people are great. They're really passionate about the movies that they make, and they are really passionate about sharing it with people. So in a way, I'm lucky, but I'm lucky in that I chose a genre with a bunch of very cool people who are just happy to be able to share their work with other people. You know, nobody gets into found footage for the money. You know, they get into found footage for the passion of filmmaking. And so that has filtered all the way through to everybody that I've talked to. They've all been really awesome.
brilliant.
Very well said.
One thing I'm curious of, you mentioned there that, you know, Ask was made for $250. When you were making that, what was one particular lesson that you learned that you're now going to take forward into other projects that you work on, like ongoing?
Well, so the biggest lesson I learned is actually, so it's a very long and complicated one, but I can give you the brief. The long and complicated version of it is in a book that I wrote called Make Your Movie Now, Feature Filmmaking Using Creativity in Less Than $500. I'm getting ready to put it out, probably not by the time this airs, but very soon after, a few weeks after, probably it will be premiering. But the big lesson, the big takeaway for me in making Ask was, most times when people want to make a movie, they go about it the traditional way that you do when you make a regular movie, when they're trying to make a found footage film. They come up with an idea, and then they figure out, how can I make this idea? My position has been very recent, for years, ever since I saw Robert Rodriguez make El Mariachi, my thinking has been found footage filmmaking is the perfect place to use his model of figure out what you have first. What are the assets that you have? What are the things that are the weird, interesting production value that you can get your hands on that cost you nothing? And then how do you reverse engineer back into a narrative that utilizes all of this stuff? So when I made Ask, the only reason it happened is because I want to say it was November, maybe late November. I used to have really bad teeth. If you guys saw the movie, you saw my bad teeth in the first half of the film. They were in really bad shape. I was homeless for a while and I wasn't taking care of them. So they'd gotten really bad. Well, I finally got a good job. I was going to be able to get my front 6 teeth had to be sort of shaved down and then basically capped. And that was going to happen end of December, early January. Well, I was in late November, and I'm not the kind of guy that like takes pictures of my life, chronicles stuff in my life, but I was like, this is a big deal. This is like a large happening in someone's life, and that should be marked in some way. I was like, what can I do with it? And then it popped into my head. I was like, well, that would be an amazing thing to put into a film where like one day a dude has terrible teeth, the next day he has amazing teeth, right? So I could shoot stuff that happened before I get the surgery and then after. What's interesting about that? Well, what if you went to bed one night with bad teeth and woke up the next day with good teeth? That's interesting. So that was the kernel of the film. And basically I just worked backwards and forwards from that moment to figure out what are all the other pieces that I can fill in around this idea to make a story out of it, doing the same thing I did with the teeth, which is like, you know, some of the weird things in the movie where like I have that pillow with mine and my dog's face on it. Like that was a gift I got from some random marketing weirdo that was like trying to get our business when I worked with an attorney doing marketing. So like I had all of these strange things that didn't seem like they would be connected in any way, but I was like, there's a through line. I can use all of these pieces and connect them to make a big story out of. And that was, for me, that was the sort of like veil being pulled off of my eyes moment making that. It was like, I feel like if I can help people understand that you pile all of the shit that you have in your life, all of the things you have access to, you know, your brother has a drone and your friend drives one of those weird security golf carts so you could have access to that, like figure out what all those things are and then figure out how to use all those things and then figure out how the story weaves through all those things. Then you haven't spent any money, but you made a movie with a lot of interesting stuff in it. So that for me was the big takeaway of Ask.
Wow. Yeah, that's the. I was gonna ask about the, you know, the whole teeth thing. Like, was that? Of course, it was, you know, not movie magic where you woke up with you know, a new set of teeth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like to your point, like think about if all of the things that happen in the movie I had to have paid for in order for it to happen, like in order for it to be in the film, either I would have spent a ton of money on visual effects for faking bad teeth for half the movie and then having real teeth, or vice versa. I shot footage when I was in Vegas for an event for my job. I shot footage on the airplane. I shot footage inside of a law firm office. Like I had all of these opportunities to do all of this stuff in the regular travels of my day. Take all of that stuff. The audience doesn't know that I didn't pay for this. You know what I mean? The audience doesn't know that this wasn't something I very seriously wrote and then had to figure out how to do, you know? So like, there's something clever to the idea of like, you know, here's a bunch of cool looking shit. And if you can figure out how to make it look like it organically was supposed to be there, they'll be impressed that you were like, how did this dude do this shit for $300? You know? So that was the impetus for me for that. And it's the reason I wrote the book. And I'm also working potentially on a course, like a filmmaking course for people, like where they can sign up and then basically just go through the journey of figuring it out themselves. Because truthfully, if you make movies on this level of budget, like it's almost impossible to not make your money back. A found footage film that costs less than $500, it's almost impossible. As long as you don't make something so horribly inept or with such bad sound that people won't sit through it, $500 is not much to make if you get on, you know, Fossum and Tubi and Amazon Prime and stuff, you know. So
yeah,
you're probably not going to make a career out of it, but you didn't burn off a ton of money. You got it back, and you got to put something cool into the world, you know. So
and then you get the opportunity to speak to people on various different podcasts.
Exactly. Yeah, you fool people into thinking that you're worth having on their show. There's like the scam never ends.
The long con, really.
Yeah, well, I just gave away the ship now, so now they know, and then this is where the train ends, guys. So you got it. Excellent journalism, fellas.
As long as you don't, burst into smoke.
Yeah, exactly. In just a second, I'm just going to vanish, like from like the end of the movie. Ask. They're on to me. They found me out.
Brilliant.
So I've got to ask, since we're on the, we're talking about, movies that, a movie that you've created, but also this new show, Found Footage Finds. Being that we talked about this particular episode, regarding screen life, what are a couple of your favorite screen life movies?
Let's see. So, well, I mean, it's tough I covered a lot of them in that episode.
Right.
So probably some of the ones that I mentioned in that episode would be some of my favorites. I really liked Host, but I actually think probably my favorite, and this one's one of the bigger ones. So like, and it's not because it's bigger, it's because I think it's super, super well written, which is the second Unfriended Dark Web.
Yes.
It was written by Steven Susko, who actually wrote the American versions of The Grudge and a couple of other movies. But what's interesting about that movie is that it feels very much like a really skilled screenwriter made something that didn't have an ounce of fat on it, right? Like every single bit of character that you see in the first 20 to 25 minutes while it's all building, it seems like fun, interesting character stuff. It's amusing and their interactions. And what you don't realize until it starts kicking in is how much very important information you've been given that is going to deliver for the next hour of the movie, because the next hour of the movie is all just like one domino after another falling very hard on these people. And so there's not really time for people to like have serious, sad conversations about the ramifications of whatever. Like it really starts happening fast. So much of the work that they did to be able to tell the story later is done in such brilliant exposition in that opening, introducing things like, that there's the one character, she's deaf, so that they come up with a very clever way to be able to use later where he's communicating, but he's doing it both verbally, what he's saying, and then what he's signing are two different things. And so he's using this technology, two different technologies at the same time, to communicate one thing to the person he cares about and a separate thing to someone who's spying on him. And I don't know, there's just some really interesting high wire stuff happening in that movie that I don't think it gets enough credit for.
That's a good call, because I would have said, if you had asked me that question, that Host and Unfriended Dark Web are right neck and neck as my favorite ones. And
Host is such an enormous accomplishment. You know what I mean? Like, while all of us were freaking out and baking bread and wiping down our groceries with, antiseptic rags and stuff, they decided, well, like, hey, why don't we just make a movie? Since none of us can leave our houses, how do we make a movie with everybody in their house? And it's like, it was literally, that movie was born as Zoom was born to awareness to the rest of the world. Like, I've never seen a technology and a film that embraced the technology sort of reach the world at the exact same time and sort of be accepted. It was really fascinating. It's kind of what I was saying earlier about how early we adopt stuff in the found footage movement. It was I don't know. I had used Skype. I kind of had heard of Zoom, but I wasn't really using it. And then suddenly that was everything I was doing to communicate with my work, Yeah. And so, like, within a month, the entire world were Zoom experts. And so they were like, screw it. Let's use that. Everybody's looking at it, like looking at the world through all these little windows now. Let's tell a story through all these little windows,
And one thing I really, really liked about Host is the fact that the timeline of the movie is the exact amount of time for the free trial for Zoom that everyone was using to communicate with people back in. It's
like the perfect meta joke of like, because everybody knows they've been talking to a friend and they weren't paying attention, and then that timer ran out and the call just ended. And so it's so funny that it was perfectly timed to end at the exact time that they would hang up on you while you were in the midst of watching a very, very intense story. It's kind of genius.
It was great. In terms of the different subgenres and the niche of found footage, what would you say has been your favorite one to dive into, and or maybe what's your favorite subgenre in general for found footage?
Well, so I've kind of been keeping a lid on what the final two episodes are. I don't know if Found released what the final two are, but I've been talking about what the first three are, and I already mentioned to you guys Bigfoot and Screen Life are the first two. But what was really interesting to me was the third episode that we did, which is week 2, is about zombies, but specifically found footage zombies. And what I found really interesting about zombie found footage films is that zombie found footage films have a lot in common with the arc of zombie mythology in general, like in the way that zombie films began as this one thing. They began as stories of basically the story of plantations and slavery and subjugation by white masters and stuff like that. Like, it began in Haiti and it was about voodoo and all that kind of stuff. And then there was an evolutionary shift at one point, and then it sort of, I call it, it came home, and then like zombies became a story that George Romero put inside of the living room instead of the plantation, so that instead of it just being a distant story that your average person in the in the suburbs couldn't understand, it was now happening in your home. This undead creature had arisen and was attacking everything. It was breaking up society. And I think found footage is that interesting evolution of horror. Horror was had a very specific structure, and it had its cliches, and it had like all of those things that you have your musical stings, and you have your specific way you shoot, the zooming and the cinematography. And then found footage came along and disrupted that in a way and said, well, what if it all looked real? What would that do to this kind of storytelling? And it's interesting because zombies are a genre that is not particularly realistic. It's not like we go into the forest with a camera and it's like spooky because you don't know what's out there and you could be eaten by a bear, and that's realistic and scary. Zombies don't exist. But when you put it in a found footage setting, it is really super effective in a way that you wouldn't have imagined it would be for a creature that's obviously on its face not real, and so that was a really interesting one to explore. I really enjoyed that one quite a bit. We had some cool people come on to talk about their movies, had some really interesting observations from the super fans and the experts. So that was a really fun one to do. And I also got to go shoot in like a community that was like still mid construction, and so like there's a bunch of dumpsters and incomplete houses and stuff because I kind of wanted to look post apocalypse. So that one was a lot of fun. Oh, I didn't even mention that to you guys. You saw the Screen Life episode, which was filmed like Screen Life. I was like, it was a desktop. I tried to do that a little bit with each episode. So whatever the subgenre is, I try to have the episode aesthetically look like it might be an entry in one of the films in that subgenre.
Right.
Like, tried to make it look a little bit post-apocalypse for the zombie one. I'm walking through like a construction site with like a trucker hat and stuff, and my actually I think this shirt when I'm doing the Bigfoot one. So like I try to theme them to the concept of whatever the episode is about. So
nice. I love that.
Yeah.
I had a feeling based on how the Screen Life one went, I was like, this feels very like a Screen Life. So I wonder if that's going to be sort of a theme throughout, or if this is going to be the format where it is going to be like a sort of screen as if you're watching it. But no, that makes total sense. Yeah, that's great.
Which is why I'm very excited for everybody to see the 5th episode. I haven't told anybody what it is, but I really like the interface of that one. It was a fun challenge for me to do, and I won't say more than that because I don't want to spoil it. But
sure.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, we're excited to see all of them.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned there about that last one being a challenge. Throughout Ask, throughout Found Footage Finds, or anything really you've been working on, was there any particular challenges that you faced during that, and then were able to overcome them and learn a lesson at the end of it?
The short answer is yes, there were challenges, but I hate to sound like this because this is such like a douchey thing to say, but most of the challenges were not for me in a filmmaking aspect. Like, first of all, these were not super complicated films in the sense of like I was shooting it myself with the device I had in my pocket, so there was not a lot in a technical know-how that I had to learn aside from episode 5, which I'm not going to tell you what it is, but you'll see why it was slightly more technically complex. But most of that the technical challenge was not the part of it. What it was for me was I was a one-man band on both of these. Literally in the first film, I had a friend that helped me with some of the editing and that final effects shot. And then in the second one, obviously the filmmakers, they shot their segments and sent it to me. But aside from that, it was all on my plate. So the challenge for me was not any individual job being too hard so much as it was I had every single job, So it was trying to figure out how to orchestrate that in a life where you also still have another job and you're also still trying to do marketing for the film that just came out previously while making this. There is a reason why people have, marketing companies do their work for them, or reasons why they have assistants to do, all the crap that fills up your day. You'd be surprised how quickly a project that doesn't even seem like it's going to be that hard when you start making it suddenly just overtake every second of your of time that you have, I'm lucky that my hobby is doing crap like this. So it was kind of just like a 1-for-1 replacement. If I wasn't doing research for the show, I would have just been doing this research myself because I have, ADHD and autism, so like I find it entertaining to look through a list and pick out all the movies where they hunt for ghosts, so, but it eats up such an enormous amount of time. So what I would say is that the lesson I probably learned that other people will take and I won't take on my own is, try not to give yourself the time to do it so that it doesn't become your life. It's a part of your life, but don't let it become the only thing in your life. I love making movies, but I said once, somebody told me like, I think it was something about like, well, what if you found out that, a movie that you made that somebody was in it that was like, how like somebody gets canceled because they've done horrible, horrible shit, like P. Diddy or whatever. They were like, well, what if you made a movie that he was in? Would you want people to stop watching it? I'm like, if that means that a dude that's a rapist keeps getting paid, yes, bury my movie. My art is not more important than human lives. And I think that's true on a personal level too. Like the movie that you're making is not more important than you being able to live a happy life. Like at the end of your life, it will be great to leave a movie behind, but it would be better that if you were like happy and mentally healthy and like had a good life. So give yourself the time that you need to do a thing. Don't pressure yourself. Don't measure yourself against other people. Don't use your success and somebody else's success as a metric of what you think of yourself. Like I'm lucky that I've gotten very good reception for Ask, but if I hadn't gotten good reception for Ask, like if it was just mixed or negative, I made a $250 movie. Of course, there's going to be some negative. You know what I mean? Jesus, like be realistic about it, dude. Just be happy. You made a whole film, and that film is available on Tubi, and there's just a shit ton of people watching it now. Like that's its own victory. It doesn't also have to be the most well-received movie in the world or make the most money or whatever. Like, enjoy the achievement that you have when it comes, and don't push yourself so much that you're not enjoying the thing that you're doing because it's a passion. You know.
I love that.
Yeah.
Sorry it took me so long to get to that end point.
Oh no, no,
You got to work up to it.
That was great. It's very profound. So thank you, Chris.
Absolutely. Well, and I don't know if we're wrapping up, but I want to say before we wrap up, thank you guys not only for having me on, but I've listened to several episodes now, and as is the case with found footage filmmakers, just as much as fans, all of us only do this. None of the people on this call right now are doing this because we're making a lot of money. We're doing this because we really enjoy it, because we like connecting with other people who have like interests, and because we feel like the stuff we like deserves that attention. So thank you guys for doing that. I'm speaking on behalf of all filmmakers when I say thank you for having these conversations, because I think I've said this before. A found footage filmmakers or found footage fans recommendation is worth its weight in gold in this community. So when you guys talk about a movie, that's dozens, if not hundreds of other people that are going to watch a film that they didn't know about before. And that is the way that films find audiences in this community. So it means a lot. And I appreciate you guys doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. That's awesome. I appreciate that so much. It's funny as well, because like a few of the people that we spoke to, like one of them in particular, Justin Barber, who made Phoenix Forgotten, like I didn't see any interviews with him for 10 years. Like it was or like between 7 to 10 years. It was really when the Phoenix Forgotten movie came out, and then he just sort of went into like do his own thing with like Space Coast and other stuff, and it was difficult for my end to try and find information so I could get sort of good questions to ask, but then I also sort of took a second to really sit back and be like, well, we're about to talk to a guy that really there's no other interviews other than from when they were promoting their movie, and it's like him and like interspliced with like Ridley Scott talking about the movie and things like that. So like it was kind of like a pinch me kind of moment, and we've had such a great time speaking to so many like cool filmmakers, so many of like movies that we've been fans of for many years have like followed us or reached out or commented on a thing, and it's like that to us is just such like a huge thing. And
well, and think about the fact that you looked around and you couldn't find anything for 7 years or something, right? The next time somebody's going to talk to him, you're going to be what they find to do research on. You know what I mean? So like there's something cool about the idea that you had to be a little bit like the trailblazer to like, put some tracks in the woods so that somebody's going to be able to follow that and take it a little further next time. They'll hear what questions you ask. They know what not to tread on, what to retread on, what new to explore. It's like, what do they say? Like everybody who started building the pyramids never saw the finished pyramids, right? Like they all died before that thing was done, but everybody was doing their piece. Again, not trying to endorse Egyptian slavery or anything, but I just mean like the ethos that you begin a project not knowing that you're not going to see the end of it, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth doing your piece of it to continue building it. We're sort of building the found footage community one conversation at a time, one episode at a time. And yeah, I think it's the only place where it feels like that's possible, like where you have this level of, we're all in found footage groups where like filmmakers are in those groups because they're fans too, like you could just type right now, you could probably go onto the found footage Facebook group and just type in, are there any filmmakers in here who would be interested in talking? And you'd probably get like 9 responses from people who have made movies. Like, where are you going to go do that for, television shows? Hey, anybody in here work on NCIS and want to talk? You know what I mean? Like that doesn't happen,
Yeah, I know, you're absolutely right. And another sort of thing with that, like the Facebook community for the Blair Witch Project, like Eduardo Sanchez is in the group. A lot of key people that made the movie are in the group. The main cast are in the group, and they're like, it's dedicated, and that fan base is so intense. And that's just like that's almost like its own subgenre of this genre. like Blair Witch in itself and the fandom that comes from that is just insane. And seeing everyone's memorabilia and, you know, randomly, like, you know, Eduardo will post a thing like, oh, I was going through the basement and it's these like old like beta or like VHS tapes and all that from like when they were making the movie. And like, it's just insane, like time capsules and stuff like that. And the Facebook community is just so intense and so passionate. It's great.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that one now has multiple generations of fans, but like in real time, you can also watch that fandom building for other franchises, like Blackwell Ghost. If you the people who love Blackwell Ghost are on that Blair Witch level of like detail to the lore and the when's the next entry coming out, and is Clay, is he really like, did that really happen to him, or is this like a, you know what I mean? Like there's so much investment in that, and I think part of it is because there's an approachability to it, you know. It feels like a person you could reach out to. A lot of movies don't feel that way. They don't feel like humans you can relate to and interact with. I've had a ton of people just reach directly out to me and just be like, hey, I just want to let you know that movie it meant a lot to me. You know, I'm in the marketing arena and I often feel like those people are idiots and they don't know what they're talking about. And thank you for making that movie that confirmed my suspicions, you know?
No, that's great.
That's great.
David, I think you should ask the question. The question of the hour.
So we do have a question we do like to end the interview with. So it is movie night for you. What is your snack setup for movie night?
So it depends. If I'm footing the bill, then it's just straight popcorn. But if someone else is paying for snacks, I don't know if you can tell. You guys can see me. No one else can. I have, since I made Ask, probably lost like 65 pounds. It turned out that I was slowly killing myself with sugar. So I've had to like cut out almost all of the sugar in my diet now. So my new thing that I love, treats wise, there's two. Dark chocolate covered almonds are great because they have the protein and the fiber along with the chocolate, and there's not all the extra crap you want out of the chocolate. But then the other one that I love, that they're also almonds, but they're covered in sesame seeds and some sort of like sweet, like almost like a honey dip. I got them from Trader Joe's. I don't even know what they're called, but they're like they're just sweet enough to taste sweet. But if you look at them, I think it's like 2 grams of sugar and a whole handful of them. But they're so good, and they're obviously crazy addictive. But they're the kind of addictive that I'm allowed to have. So I always have a bag of those nearby. My friend and I do a lot of, it used to be Skype watching. It's Discord watching now that Skype no longer exists, but he'll watch a movie on his end and I'll watch on mine, and I'll have to actually like mute my headphones unless I want to say something because I'm just crunching on almonds the whole time and the microphone is right here. So I think it was the second movie. He was like, dude, can you shut that off, please? I can hear your food. So, but yeah,
nice.
So popcorn if I'm buying, but if anybody else is buying, I'm buying those bags from Trader Joe's because I get big bags of those.
Oh yeah,
nice. I'm gonna have to check those out. I'm actually starting a kind of a weight loss thing here too. Just for health reasons, of course, for health reasons, but that's a good idea for lowering the sugar content. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, mine was it was for health reasons, but I went to the ER for an unrelated thing, and they were like, "Hey, your blood sugar's like 304. You should probably be in like a coma right now because it's like supposed to be under 100." And mine was like 304, something like that. So they were like, "We're not sure how you're conscious right now, but this is bad." So I was afraid I was going to drop dead, and nothing motivates you to change your diet like fearing you're going to drop dead sometime soon.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. Yeah.
But what a fun way to end a found footage podcast.
Brilliant. Yeah.
It's all about existential fear. That's what it comes back to.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Fear of death.
But yeah, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. Your insight has been incredible. We're so excited for Found Footage Finds. We can't wait to see the final episode, but we also can't wait to see the rest of them as well. And fingers well and truly crossed for season 2 all the way through to 10 at least. So.
Well, if people want it, I'll keep making it. And I said it before, but I love you guys' show. So thank you so much for being willing to have me on and talk about all the stuff that I'm working on. And not to I'm going to say it while we're recording, so nobody can say that they didn't hear it. If you guys ever run out of you need a last minute guest, and somebody craps out on you, all you got to do is hit me up, because I love talking about found footage movies, even when it's not my stuff. I just love talking found footage films. So you always know where to find me.
Awesome. Yeah, no, we'll definitely take you up on that. And as well, if there's anything else that you ever end up working on that you want to come on and talk about, there's always a space for you here.
Oh, John, don't make promises, man. You saw that people popped up in that previous season.
That's
I will.
fair.
Now that I've got your information, I may be hitting you guys up for some expert talking head commentary in this or something related to it. So,
yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. We're more than happy to move the found footage genre ahead as far as we can, and if we are a small part of that, then we're more than happy to help. So, yeah,
we'll see.
Keep
Now
in
you've got
touch.
me contractually obligated. You got me on a recording saying I'm going to call you. So now you can.
Yeah,
The whole audience heard you say it, Chris. They're going to be expecting it for season 2. When's the call coming?
yeah. Hey, we'll make ourselves available. Don't you worry.
Oh yeah, for sure.
No, that's awesome. I definitely. Well, so now your listeners have all the more reason to go check out the show, because there's the promise of you guys popping up on at least the Paranormal Investigations episode, which is the only one that I've talked about. Is definitely coming. So,
but no, again, Chris, thank you so much for joining us, man. This was a great time.
absolutely,
Yes,
had a
thank
great
you so
time.
much.
Thank you guys so much for having me.